Welcome back. It was a tough year for cannabis investors. Looking back on 2019, as measured by the marijuana-focused Alternative Harvest MJ ETF, the sector is down roughly 35% on the year, despite some landmark pushes to legalize marijuana in more states. Remember, back in June, Illinois became the 11th state to legalize recreational marijuana in the country, and the first state to do so via the legislative process. The state is now estimated to become a $2 billion cannabis market, beginning with legal sales this January. So for more on what Illinois could spark and whether 2020 could shape up to be a rebound year for the sector, we're joined by CFRA Analyst Garrett Nelson. Garrett, it's good to see you again. What's interesting is that the MJ ETF enjoyed its best day since inception, right after Senator Cory Booker said he thought Joe Biden was high for not supporting legal marijuana at a federal level at the latest Democratic debate. I thought that was interesting. I'm not sure if those are directly connected, but do we think that legalization at a federal level is enough of a catalyst to help boost the sector next year?
Hi, thanks for having me. Absolutely. That's really the big wild card as we head into 2020 is if there will be legalization or just deschedulization. And what you saw last month, a bill that would effectively do that passed the House Judiciary Committee and will go to the full House for a vote at some point, probably in early January. Mm-hmm. And then at that point, it goes over to the Senate, where it could be dead on arrival, just given the Senate Majority Leader's very outspoken opposition to cannabis. He may not even consider it for a vote in the Senate. But what you saw in November with that House Judiciary bill being passed is you saw a huge rally. The stocks jumped, about 20 to 30% that the week that passed. So that's really the big question heading into next year.
Well, the other thing too is, on the marijuana front, we could understand some skepticism perhaps from Senator Mitch McConnell there, as you're talking about his position on it. But when we look at CBD, that's another thing too. And we talk about the way that hemp has grown across states with his support and backing there. When we talk about CBD, what are your expectations for some legal groundwork that we haven't gotten yet by the FDA in the way that it could be used in food? Because we know that people have been selling this and the expectations are very high.
That's right. More problematic is recreational marijuana being legalized. Still to date, it's only legal in about 11 states. So, but medical marijuana is legal in 33 states today, and that number is growing. And you can put CBD in that category where we think it'll gradually be legalized. In the coming months and quarters. But the big question is surrounding recreational marijuana. We think that's the much larger market in the long term.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Garrett, it's Heidi here. So I want to get your thoughts on what the future is for these marijuana companies, because a lot of the companies were banking on a big boost following Canada's legalization efforts late last year. It didn't really translate into adult use sales booming either. And so they bet in the U.S. That still hasn't really translated either. So is it about moving into consumer packaged goods? Is it about moving into edibles? Is it different variations? What's the future for this market?
Sure. So the problem among cannabis companies is, there's still generating widespread losses from an earnings perspective. Yet these companies are flush with cash from all the investment that's been made from beverage companies, from tobacco companies. So the balance sheets are fairly strong, actually. So you're in this period where there's not quite distress across the industry, but the industry is plagued by oversupply, mm-hmm. and prices are falling. So overall fundamentals are very weak, and that's exactly what happened in Canada when it became legalized. All of a sudden, there weren't as many barriers to production, and you saw a flood of supply. And we expect more of the same really in 2020. The U.S. is really the big market. It's 10 times the size of the Canadian market. So it's about a $50 billion market per year. And about 3/4 of all cannabis sales right now in the U.S. take place in the illicit market.
Yeah.
Hey, Garrett, it's Chris here. I have a question for you. So I have a different sort of take on all of this outside of just the market and growth. So obviously there's this big cannabis craze, right, in the U.S. And so even PR firms now, I see PR firms specializing just in CBD or just in cannabis. And so that's also exploded in growth. But my question to you is the following. Let's say this trend continues with legalization, across the U.S. How will that impact, criminal justice reform? And again, it's not necessarily a market question, but you have all these people who are, sitting in jail right now for things. So what are we going to see if this becomes legalized, right? And we keep going in that direction. What's going to happen to all of these people that the state is paying for right now who are in jail for this very same thing that is now going to continue to be legalized in the U.S.?
Sure. So I think that's part of, broader criminal justice reform is, you're going to see a lot of those sentences commuted. Some of these things thrown out, and that's it actually has some support in Republican circles as well because they view it as a positive for overall employment. A lot of people who have criminal records because of these, marijuana-related infractions, having their records cleaned and will create a healthier overall employment pool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we've seen pieces of the legislation proposed thus far, including some criminal justice touch points, at least, especially from Senator Kamala Harris. But now we know that she is no longer in the race. Perhaps her bill, though, may still advance. Garrett Nelson, thank you so much for breaking all that down and what to expect from cannabis in 2020. Hey investors, Zach Guzman here. Are you interested in learning more about the markets and getting the latest financial news? Well, then click right here to subscribe to our Yahoo Finance YouTube channel. Get the latest up-to-the-minute market analysis, big interviews in the world of finance, and information on how to manage your money every day wherever you are.